Deep in the Norwegian mountains, it turns out to hold the mystery of a monster that has been alive for thousands of years. The monster woke up from its sleep because of the actions of humans who accidentally disturbed their home, until finally someone had to stop the monster. At the beginning of the film, there is a young climber named Nora, struggling to get to the top of Nora, accompanied by her father named Tobias. Once at the top, Nora and Tobias saw the beauty of nature and mountains that were very beautiful and amazing. But behind that beauty is a mystery of folklore or fairy tales about a monster they call a troll. Nora doesn't believe in such things. Especially in modern times like this, Nora is sure it's just a bedtime story. But it seems that Tobias has another belief. For him, the troll exists and is real. We can't see it with our eyes, but we can feel it with our hearts. Nora tries what her father said, and it turns out she sees several troll faces appear on the cliffs of the mountain, like portraits of the faces of the Hawkage in Konoha. 20 years have passed. Nora is now part of the archaeologists who search for and find something on ancient sites, one of which is about dinosaur fossils. Nora is one of the best among them. In fact, she almost always succeeds in finding dinosaur fossils that are millions of years old. While on the other hand, there is a mining area that seems to be opposed by many local residents. They do not want the environment to be damaged by the mining company's actions. The miners were ready to blow up the inside of the mine hole, but when it was blown up, a roar was heard that was loud enough to scare the residents and miners. What is that sound? While those in the mine started running out because the rocks collapsed. The incident made many related parties involved in handling this problem, including the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister was accompanied by his assistant named Andreas. They got information from the miners and a recording that was quite surprising. There were traces similar to giant feet, but they felt it was just a coincidence. Andreas felt they needed someone who was an expert in this field, and Nora was that person. Nora was picked up by helicopter and taken to a secret military headquarters. Nora was greeted by Andreas and explained some details of the problems they were facing. Nora ended up in the middle of important people in the country. Even the general was there to handle this problem. Nora was even underestimated by one of them. Why was a dinosaur fossil expert there? A few moments later, an information seeker named Sigrid came. She got a recording from a local resident who was around the mine. The recording showed an oddity, and there was a very loud roar. Nora asked Sigrid to replay the recording and saw that there were traces of monster footprints. What they were facing seemed like no ordinary problem. Meanwhile, in a location near the mountains, an old couple lived with their dog. Their dog barked repeatedly as if seeing something scary. At first, they were not aware, but slowly their house shook and they hid underground. Once it subsided, they came out and saw that their house was half gone. Meanwhile, Nora asked them for permission to see the couple's house directly. Using a helicopter, Nora was accompanied by Andreas and greeted by Captain Chris. Nora asked them for some explanation of what had happened. The grandfather looked so scared and still in shock. He didn't even know what creature it was, while the grandmother heard a roar that was quite loud like a lion's roar, but louder and seemed to have a tone. Nora then continued to look for information around. She found footprints that were similar to what they saw at the military base. Even the original size turned out to be bigger. Unfortunately, Nora still needed help to deal with this problem, and she knew who to ask. Yes, her father. Nora came to her aging father. They were greeted at gunpoint. Fortunately, nothing happened because Nora only wanted to ask for his help about trolls. So all this time, Tobias was still researching about trolls that were believed to exist and live in the mountains. Although it was only a fairy tale, Tobias collected a lot of information about trolls. Nora showed a recording of what happened to Tobias, and he was sure that it was a troll. A long time ago, he had met a troll that looked like that. But Nora was not sure that it was a troll. How could trolls live in the real world? The debate between them continued even though 20 years had passed. But in the end, Tobias was invited by them to go somewhere. The place was believed by Tobias to be where trolls rested. Of course, they didn't believe it. But they let Tobias work and look for information. A few minutes had passed, but Nora felt that her father was just going around in circles there. Nora invited her father to come back, but suddenly there was a big eye behind them. The eye turned out to be a troll that camouflaged itself as a rock. It turns out that what Tobias said was true. Trolls are real and still alive in the mountains. They left there to tell the headquarters that what they had feared was true. Of course, Tobias' words were not immediately believed. Even many accused him of being a crazy man. This made Nora a little embarrassed and confused about what to do. Nora regretted bringing her father into this problem. She decided to step down and go back to being a dinosaur fossil hunter. But Tobias didn't let Nora just like that. Some words about the past and about her late mother made Nora melt. Nora realized that her father only wanted to make her proud. And now Tobias has a plan to conquer the troll. This plan may or may not work. Tobias and several military troops went to a forest under the mountains. Tobias was sure that the troll would definitely pass this way. And sure enough, a few moments later, the troll came until the military troops prepared their weapons. The weapons had been fired, but to no avail. The troll was still standing and still holding on. There was chaos there. Even Nora and Tobias were cornered. When Nora and the others tried to escape, Tobias actually approached the troll. He approached slowly as he wanted to say that he was not a threat. What Tobias did seemed to work and made Nora smile. But from the side, there were troops who fired their weapons at the troll until he became angry. Tobias, who was nearby, was hit by the troll until he was thrown and could not survive. In the end, Tobias died. Before he died, Tobias had time to say a few words like, "House, king, and palace, what did they mean?" Nora began to study the book written by her father. It seemed to have something to do with what he said last time. In the book, it was also seen that trolls could not be exposed to sunlight. But didn't they see trolls come out during the day? And again, there was a picture of a church in Tobias' notebook. What did it mean? Meanwhile, the troll began to approach the densely populated area. People started running and taking cover from the troll. Then, not long after, Nora returned with Captain Chris with 4 helicopters carrying church bells. They started circling around the troll, and it turned out that the bells made him dizzy. But unfortunately, the sound of the bell was still too light and easy to stop. The helicopters began to fall and headed towards a small child. But the troll actually saved him. It seems the troll is not evil. But where is it headed? The military has followed Nora's method, but nothing worked. In the end, Nora was removed from the mission. Seeing that, Andreas also stepped back and joined Nora. Now the Prime Minister has his own way to destroy the monster with their latest missile. It is claimed the missile can burn a city, so civilians will be evacuated. Meanwhile, Nora began to get new clues. She remembered her father's words about the palace, which meant the Oslo Royal Palace. Their arrival was not welcomed, but a man named Sinding appeared. Sinding had been expecting someone to come someday, and that day was the day. Sinding believed that Nora was Tobias's daughter. Sinding invited them and showed them something. Behind the luxurious palace, it turned out to hold a mystery that might answer why the troll was heading towards the city. There were many bones of trolls who had once lived and were killed by the country's leaders. There was even a small troll skull, maybe even a baby. When Nora shone light on one of the troll bones, something reacted. It seemed like the light made it burn. Nora had an idea and a plan to stop the troll. But she also needed Captain Chris's help to carry out this action. While the military leaders were preparing to release a missile that would destroy the city. But Andreas asked Sigurd for help to hack the missile access, and he succeeded in doing so. That gave Nora and the others time to carry out their action. Nora and Andreas lured the troll using a small troll skull. The idea worked and brought the troll to a park located a little out of town. Although the troll's skull fell, they managed to trap it in the location. That's where Captain Chris prepared an ultraviolet lamp and shone it directly at the troll. It worked. The troll began to look in pain. But the longer it felt pain, Nora became pitiful and took pity on it. She turned off the lamp and asked the troll to leave the city and return to the mountains. But it was too late because the morning sun appeared and illuminated the city, including the troll. Slowly he began to burn until he collapsed. Nora's good intentions did not have time to bear fruit, but Nora also had the merit of saving the city from the troll's anger.